It was a brisk Tuesday afternoon in Washington, D.C., and tension hung in the air like static before a summer storm. Inside the James S. Brady press briefing room, the usual buzz of anticipation was louder than usual. Journalists from every major outlet filled the rows, clutching notepads, adjusting their recorders, preparing to dissect the latest talking points from the Trump administration. It wasn't just another news cycle. Something felt different. At the podium stood Karoline Leavitt, the newly appointed White House press secretary, making headlines not just for her age, at 30, the youngest in U.S. history, but for her unapologetically combative tone. She was a communications firebrand, a political brawler in heels and a navy blue blazer, and she came to the podium with purpose.
She didn't waste time.
President Trump is committed to leveling the playing field for American workers, she said with unwavering clarity. Tariffs are not a burden. They are a tax cut for the American people and a way to finally hold foreign nations accountable for decades of trade abuse. The line was crisp, calculated, delivered with steel in her spine. But the briefing room, filled with skeptics and scribes, wasn't going to let that slide without challenge. And sitting halfway down the third row was Josh Boak, a seasoned economics reporter for the Associated Press, known for asking questions that rattled even the most prepared press secretaries. His eyes narrowed slightly. His pen tapped against the edge of his legal pad. Then his hand went up.
He was called upon.
"Karoline," he said, leaning forward, "you've stated the president believes tariffs are a tax cut. But basic economics tells us that tariffs are passed on to consumers. Isn't that, in effect, a tax hike on Americans? And if he's so committed to cutting taxes, why is he prioritizing tariffs over traditional tax reductions?" The room froze for a beat. Reporters instinctively looked up. There was a challenge with teeth. Leavitt's expression didn't flinch, but her smile, once tight and rehearsed, curled into something colder. "Well, Josh, with all due respect," she began, her tone slowing like a boxer preparing a jab, "he's not implementing tax hikes. Tariffs are a tax on foreign countries that have been ripping us off for years." She paused, letting it hang. Boak wasn't done. "But have you personally ever paid a tariff?" He followed up, his voice more direct, the tension sharper. "You do know that it's American importers who pay, not foreign governments. Businesses here feel the pinch. They raise prices to stay afloat. That cost? It's passed to regular people." Now it was personal. Leavitt's eyes narrowed. The temperature in the room dropped. You could hear fingers freeze on keyboards, a dozen journalists frozen mid-quote. "I think it's insulting," she said, voice now steely, "that you're trying to test my knowledge of this administration's economic policy.
This isn't about me.
This is about a president who is using every tool available to fight for American jobs and American sovereignty." She didn't blink. Then, the pivot, a rhetorical dagger drawn with precision. "The Associated Press," she said, making a deliberate pause, "has made it clear they have an agenda. Maybe that's why you're missing the point entirely. The president's policies are working. The stock market's up. Job growth is strong. And for the first time in decades, foreign countries are finally at the negotiating table." Josh Boak sat back. His pen stopped moving. The jab had landed, and the room knew it. A few reporters exchanged wide-eyed glances. Others started typing again, now racing to capture what had just turned from a standard policy briefing into a full-blown political sparring match. Outside the room, the story went viral in real time. Within hours, clips of the exchange had spread like wildfire across social media. X, formerly Twitter, trended with hashtags like #Leavitt CLAPS BACK, #PressroomShowdown, Showdown, and #Tariff Tensions. TikTok creators clipped the moment, layering it with dramatic music. Podcasts scrambled to discuss it on their next episodes. That evening, headlines across media outlets captured the drama. White House, AP reporter clash over tariffs. Karoline Leavitt throws down in briefing room battle. Tempers flare as tariff debate turns personal. Political analysts wasted no time weighing in. Conservative pundits praised Leavitt for her composure and ferocity. "She's got backbone," one anchor declared on cable news. "That's what we need at that podium, someone who fights back." Meanwhile, critics called her response defensive and overly combative. "This isn't reality TV," tweeted one columnist. "This is government communication, and it deserves better than sound bites." Behind the scenes, reports emerged that Leavitt had been anything but shaken. A staffer familiar with the briefing said she was proud of the exchange. "I will never back down from media narratives designed to distort the truth," she was overheard telling aides. "We don't flinch when the press tries to spin facts." And Josh Boak? He returned to his newsroom later that evening, reportedly unfazed. After all, he had weathered political tempests before. He filed his report as always, sticking to facts, no theatrics. But he knew this one would be different. The press briefing room had become a microcosm of America's larger political divide: facts versus spin, policy versus personality, and in this case, a fiery 30-year-old press secretary versus a veteran journalist unwilling to let the narrative go unchecked. For some, the moment reinforced Leavitt's brand: sharp, fearless, and loyal to the MAGA agenda. For others, it was a troubling sign of hostility toward the press, one that raised deeper questions about accountability and transparency. But no matter which side of the aisle viewers sat on, one thing was certain: they were watching. What unfolded that afternoon wasn't just a disagreement over tariffs. It was a battle for control of the narrative. And in this administration, the fight for the last word is never over.